We pick it on the next question, that is question 7, A, Roman B. So the question says, highlight assumptions of the producer surplus. Highlight assumption, that is Roman 2. Highlight the assumptions, what do you call the assumptions of a producer surplus. Highlight the assumptions of a producer surplus. So before we highlight assumptions of a producer surplus, it is very important to understand what we basically mean by a producer surplus. When you talk about a producer surplus, we basically say that there is a difference between the amount the producer is willing to supply good for and the amount that they actually receive when they make the trade, which in most cases we say is an additional benefit, because you realize that what they receive is more than the minimum that they're willing to supply the goods for. So that is actually a benefit. So if you're to draw, that is not of essence, but you can particularly have questions that will tell you to define a producer surplus and draw the diagram. But for this particular question, it has simply asked on highlight 5 assumptions of the producer surplus. When you look at those assumptions, one, we talk about producer is assumed to be rational. Basically, a consumer is aiming to maximize profit, and we know that we maximize profit where MR is equals to MC. So we say number 1, producer. One, we say producer is assumed to be rational, i.e. we say aim to maximize the profit, We know i.e. at the point, MR is equals to MC. That is basically where the consumer basically aims to maximize the profit. The second assumption is that there is perfect competition. There's a perfect competition market. Number 2, we say there is a perfect competitive. There is a perfect competitive. We call it a perfect competitive. There is a perfect competitive perfect competition market. There is a perfect competition market. We know how a perfect competition basically work, and we say that assumed to be perfect, perfectly competitive. Assumed to be perfectly, we say perfectly competitive. Consumer is basically assumed to be perfectly competitive. Then you say that there is free entry and exit. There is a next assumption. There is what you call free entry and exit, i.e. there is free entry and exit, i.e. that is to say that producer can freely enter and exit. Can freely enter and exit as the third assumption. The fourth assumption, basically, we say there is no externalities. There is no externalities as the next assumption. Basically, we say that there is no externality. That is saying external cost and benefits, external cost or benefit. No external, what you call external costs and benefits. No external cost and benefits. And lastly, assumptions, we say constant return to scale. The fifth assumption, we say constant return. We call it constant return to scale. What do you basically mean by constant return to scale? We know that average cost of production remains constant. Average, that is to say average cost of the production. Average cost of the production remains constant. remains constant. Average cost of production basically remains constant as quantity produces increases, as quantity produces, as quantity produces increases, as quantity produces basically increases, as quantity produces basically increases, as the quantity produced basically increases. Again, I said at the beginning of that particular question, I said you can be asked what a producer supply as a major area, and you can also be told to illustrate using a diagram how producer supplies basically come. And that is how we particularly handle that question. That is question 7A Roman 2. That is how we go about that question.